right. Diving right in. We've got a lot to unpack about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, specifically what went down January 17th and 18th. And you know we're going deep, right? Pulling from straight news, some heavy analysis pieces, even a few cultural things I found that were really interesting.
Absolutely. Trying to paint a full picture for you. Connecting all the dots.
Exactly. And seriously, some of the stuff is pretty wild. Like, we're talking a race against time with these ballistic missiles. There's this art exhibit in New York that's making people think. And then there's the whole U.S. policy thing. Could completely change the game.
Yeah, we got to keep an eye on all of that. But I think best place to start is probably, what's happening on the ground right now, especially with the fighting escalating like this.
Okay. Yeah, let's get into that.
Cool.
Kyiv, obviously. A Russian missile attack on January 18th killed 3 people.
Right.
And it really got to me reading the BBC report. They said residents heard the explosions before the air raid sirens even went off.
Yeah, that's a chilling detail for sure. Really shows you the problem with ballistic missiles like the Iskander-M. These things, they move so fast, the usual warning systems, they just can't keep up.
So by the time people know, it's already hit.
Pretty much. Makes it really tough for Ukraine to defend against, too. I mean, their air defenses are already stretched thin as it is. And to actually stop a ballistic missile, that's a whole other level technologically.
Right.
This attack really drives home how vulnerable people are, even right in the capital.
And the damage in Kyiv, the BBC talked about a deep crater outside a business center, a bakery totally wiped out. It just shows you this war isn't just on some battlefield somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. This attack and the way Russia's been targeting the energy grid since autumn 2022, that's deliberate. It's about disrupting life for everyday people, hoping to break their spirit. Like that huge attack on January 15th, 43 missiles, over 70 drones they used.
Wow. Do you think, is this a sign that they're getting desperate? Or is there some bigger strategy we're missing?
It's probably a bit of both, to be honest. Hitting civilian stuff, it could be a reaction to Ukraine's success on the military front. Well, Russia might be trying to, make up for their losses on the battlefield by making life miserable for civilians.
So yeah, like you said, break their will to fight back.
Exactly. But we also got to remember the energy grid, it's strategic, especially in winter. No heat, no lights, no basic services. That creates huge problems for people. Could even turn public opinion against the war.
And this isn't just Kyiv, right? They're hitting other cities too.
Oh, absolutely. Kryvyi Rih, they had 4 people killed on January 17th. Then a day later, Zaporizhzhia, 10 wounded there. This is a full-on assault across the whole country, millions of Ukrainians affected, makes the humanitarian crisis even worse, and honestly, it raises some serious questions about war crimes, potentially.
It's hard to hear about all that, but Ukraine isn't just sitting back. They're fighting back, too. Their use of drones targeting Russia's oil infrastructure, that was interesting to me.
Yeah, that's a big deal. We're seeing reports of Ukrainian drones hitting oil depots in the Tula and Kaluga regions. Those are south of Moscow, by the way, so it's bringing the war closer to home for Russia.
Right. But what's the real impact? Is this just for show, or is it causing real damage?
Oh, it's definitely more than just symbolic. There are pictures all over the internet. Those depots are on fire. And Reuters is reporting that Russia's petroleum exports, they actually went down 10% in 2024 because of these attacks.
Wow, that's a big hit. So the drones are hurting them financially, but also psychologically, I'd imagine.
You got it. It's not just the economic impact, it's also making them question their security back home. Imagine living in Moscow and seeing news of drone strikes just a couple 100 miles away. That's got to make you think twice.
Yeah, you'd be wondering how good their defenses really are. Sounds like both sides are in this crazy game of cat and mouse with their air defenses trying to shoot down these drones.
Absolutely. Both sides are trying to knock those drones out of the sky. It's become a major battlefront in this war.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit. We have to talk about these reports of potential war crimes. Those videos that came out on that pro-Russian Telegram channel.
Oh, yeah. Those videos allegedly showing Russian soldiers with the decapitated heads of Ukrainian soldiers. And then there's the stuff about prisoner abuse, desecration of bodies.
Awful stuff. What do we know about these allegations? Could there be actual war crimes investigations?
It's really important to be careful here, not jump to conclusions. But those allegations, they're incredibly serious. If they turn out to be true, those actions violate international law big time. We could definitely see war crimes investigations.
It just reminds you how brutal war is no matter what. The scars it leaves behind.
Absolutely. And even beyond these specific allegations, we got to think about the overall human cost. Verified figures show nearly 89,000 Russian soldiers dead, and that's probably way too low.
That many. And we can't forget about the millions of Ukrainians who've had to flee their homes.
Right. Almost 3 million people have left Ukraine permanently since this whole thing started. It's a refugee crisis on a massive scale. It's a huge demographic challenge for Ukraine and obviously a tragedy for all those families.
It's hard to wrap your head around how much suffering there is.
It really is. But we have to face that human cost if we want to understand the real impact of this war. And it's not just the human toll either. Both sides are feeling the economic strain too.
Yeah, you're right. Forbes was saying that Russia's national wealth fund has shrunk like 57% since 2022. Can you explain what that is and why that matters?
So the National Wealth Fund, it's kind of like Russia's emergency savings account built up from their oil and gas money. They're dipping into it now to pay for the war and to keep their economy from totally collapsing. But the fact that it's shrinking so much, that's a bad sign, especially with the U.S. slapping on those new sanctions, targeting their oil exports and shipbuilding. Makes you wonder how long they can keep this up.
So those sanctions are really starting to hurt.
They are. Russia's ability to pay for this war is definitely being tested.
On the other side, Ukraine's getting a lot of support internationally. That deal with the UK, $3.6 billion in military aid every year, and they're using frozen Russian assets to pay for it. That's pretty impressive.
It is. It's a huge deal, both financially and symbolically. It shows the world is standing with Ukraine, and it's kind of poetic, using Russia's own money to help defend against them.
It kind of is. And Ukraine themselves, they spent over $100 billion on defense in 2024, didn't they?
That's right. With a lot of help from the U.S. and Europe, they've managed to put up a strong fight.
But that U.S. aid, it's not guaranteed, is it? With Trump coming back in.
That's the big unknown right now. Trump, he's been pretty skeptical about the U.S. being involved in this whole thing. Even Blinken, the outgoing Secretary of State, he said he's worried Trump might just completely throw out everything Biden did on Ukraine.
So we could see a complete 180 on U.S. policy.
It's definitely possible, and that could change everything. The U.S. has been giving crucial support to Ukraine. If that goes away, it's going to be way harder for them to resist Russia.
Okay, so we've got this escalation in the fighting, the huge human cost, all the economic pressure, and now this uncertainty with the U.S. It's pretty heavy stuff.
It is. But there are some bright spots, too, wouldn't you say? The Ukrainian people, they're showing incredible resilience.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in how Ukrainian culture is managing to survive, even thrive through all of this.
That's a really interesting part of this whole story. Even with the war going on, Ukraine is still finding ways to show the world who they are and what they're aiming for in the future. Like, the Ukrainian House, they're going back to that World Economic Forum in Davos.
Oh, right.
That's a powerful message, don't you think?
Definitely. They're going to be showing off their resources, their rebuilding plans, basically reminding everyone that Ukraine matters for a stable Europe. Like, hey, we're still here. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And this resilience, it's not just in politics or economics. You see it in their art, too. There's this photography exhibit in New York by Boris Mikhailov. Really moving stuff. His work goes way back, captures something essential about Ukraine. War, displacement, the way the landscape keeps changing.
Sounds like it really gives you a feel for the country, what they've been through.
It does. And then there's another exhibit I saw, Slava Ukraini, Glory to Ukraine, at Connecticut College. They're using graphic design to show how Ukrainians are resisting, staying strong.
It's amazing how creative people can be, even in such dark times. The human spirit, you know.
Absolutely. Art has this power to document, to help people process things, to resist, especially during a conflict like this.
It's so easy to get caught up in the military stuff, the politics, but you're right, the cultural side is so important too. It reminds us that this is about real people, their lives.
Right. And speaking of real people, we can't forget about how this war is affecting the rest of the world. The impact goes way beyond Ukraine and Russia.
Okay, so zoom out for a second. We talked about the economic pressure on Russia, but what about globally?
Well, those sanctions on Russian oil, they've really shaken up the global energy markets. Don't forget, Russia is a huge energy supplier. When their stuff gets disrupted, the whole world feels it.
Yeah, this isn't just some regional thing. It's having a global impact. Like what? Give me some specifics.
Well, energy prices are all over the place. People are worried about running out of fuel. Countries are scrambling to find other places to get their energy from. This whole conflict, it shows how interconnected the global economy really is and how risky it is to depend on one country for something as important as energy.
Yeah, a lot of countries are rethinking things now, that's for sure. And what about like the political side of things? Are there any alliances we should be watching?
Definitely. Russia and Iran getting closer, that's a big one. Could have consequences way beyond Ukraine.
Right. Al Jazeera was talking about a comprehensive strategic partnership treaty. Sounds pretty serious.
It is. Basically, they're going to be working together more on military stuff, sharing intelligence, maybe even giving each other advanced weapons that could really destabilize the Middle East. And honestly, it could affect global security too.
Man, it seems like everything in this conflict is connected to something else. It's so complicated, how do you even begin to solve something like this?
It's true. It's a real mess. You got to understand the history, the politics, why everyone is doing what they're doing. It's a lot to take in.
I know what you mean. It can feel kind of overwhelming.
It's okay to feel overwhelmed. We don't have to figure it all out right now. The important thing is to stay informed, talk about it, consider different viewpoints, and never forget the human cost, all those stories of people suffering, but also showing incredible strength. That's what really matters.
You're right. We can't get lost in all the data and politics. It's about people's lives.
Exactly. And while we're talking about the bigger picture, we got to consider what happens when the U.S. changes leadership again. That Trump factor, it's a big wild card.
Big time. Feels like everything we've talked about could change overnight.
It could. And the consequences could be huge.
So, what could happen? Give me some possible scenarios.
Well, Trump said during his campaign he wants to cut back on aid to Ukraine. If he actually does that, it'll totally shift the power dynamic in the region.
Ukraine really depends on that aid, right?
They do. It's essential for them, both for their military and their economy. If that U.S. support suddenly disappears, they'll be in a really tough spot, and Russia might see it as a chance to go on the offensive again.
And what about the U.S.? How does this affect their foreign policy, their relationships with other countries?
Well, Trump's America First thing, it's already caused some tension with U.S. allies. And changing course on Ukraine, that could make things even worse. Could be seen as the U.S. backing down from its role as a global leader, which could embolden some of those authoritarian regimes around the world.
So we could be looking at a lot of instability, both in the region and globally.
Yeah, this is a crucial moment. The decisions that get made in the next few months, they're going to have a huge impact, and the effects will be felt for a long time.
So with all this uncertainty, what can we do?
Stay informed, for one thing. Find reliable news sources. Don't be afraid to question your own assumptions. Be open to different points of view.
It's about staying curious, basically, right? Not getting intimidated by how complex it all is.
Exactly. And don't think you can't make a difference. Supporting those humanitarian organizations, pushing for policies that promote peace, talking to people about this stuff, all of that matters.
Even though it feels like we're just one person in this huge mess.
You're not just one person. This conflict is about more than just land or power. It's about basic human rights, about countries being able to decide their own future, about the whole international order. It affects everyone.
Yeah, we're all connected in the end. And the choices we make, they have consequences, for better or worse.
True that. You know, earlier we were talking about the human cost, all the suffering, but were there any stories of, resilience that stood out to you?
Oh, for sure. Like you said before, the Ukrainian house, going back to Davos, that's a powerful statement. They're not giving up. But there was also that story from the BBC, the woman cleaning up her bakery after it was destroyed.
Oh, right.
It was so sad, but also so inspiring. I mean, she said, we got used to it. It's the third year of war. It makes you realize how strong people can be, even when everything's falling apart around them.
Yeah. Shows the spirit of the Ukrainian people. I mean, they're living with the threat of violence every day, losing people they love, their homes and businesses destroyed. And they're still finding ways to cope, to rebuild, to have hope for the future. It's a good lesson for all of us. Even when things seem really dark, the human spirit can still find a way.
It reminds us that even small things we do can make a difference. Helping out, showing support.
Absolutely. Anything we do to ease suffering, to help people understand each other better, to push for peace, it all adds up.
Even with all the bad news and scary analysis, there's still hope.
I agree. Stories like that woman rebuilding her bakery, they give you hope that even when things are really tough, things can get better.
All right, I think this is a good place to take a break. We've covered a lot of ground, the escalation of the fighting, the human cost, what it means for the whole world, the uncertainty with U.S. support. It's a lot.
We've gone deep into how complex this conflict is, how resilient the Ukrainians are, and why it's so important to stay informed, to stay involved.
It is a lot. You kind of got to take a step back sometimes. But, one thing that really hit me getting ready for this deep dive, it's just how much information is out there.
It's true. It's overwhelming trying to figure out what's real, what's biased, what's just straight up propaganda. It's almost like you need a PhD in information science just to keep up.
Right. You have to be like an information detective or something.
Yeah.
Seriously, we need to get better at thinking critically about the stuff we're reading and watching.
I agree 100%. And this isn't just about Ukraine. It's everything. We need these skills in every part of our lives. Being able to think for yourself, evaluate information, form your own opinions, that's more important than ever.
It's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
But it's also a chance to, I don't know, become better at consuming information, being a better citizen.
Exactly. We have access to so much information, but that means we've got to be more careful with it, too.
Okay, so as we wrap this up, I want to turn it back to you, the listener.
Yeah.
With everything we've talked about, what do you think is next for Ukraine? What's coming down the road?
That's the big question, right? I mean, with the fighting getting worse, the economic problems, and now this question mark over U.S. support, this next year is going to be huge.
It feels like things are about to change in a big way.
They are. The decisions that get made in the next few months, they're going to affect everything. The stakes are really high.
So what can people do? How do they stay involved, make a difference?
Stay informed, first of all. Find news sources you can trust. Don't just believe everything you hear, and try to see things from different sides.
Stay curious. Right. Don't shy away from the tough questions.
Exactly. And remember, you're not powerless. You can support those groups, helping people in Ukraine. You can speak up for policies that promote peace. You can talk to your friends and family about this stuff. It all matters.
Yeah. Even if it feels like just a drop in the bucket.
It's not just a drop. This conflict, it's about more than just land or who's in charge. It's about people's basic rights, about countries being able to choose their own path, about the whole system of international relations. It affects all of us.
It's a reminder that we're all connected. And what we do, it has an impact, for good or bad.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We hope this has given you a better understanding of what's going on and why it matters so much.
It's just a snapshot, of course. Things are changing all the time, so stay informed, keep learning about all the different sides of this story.
And like always, we encourage you to check out the stuff we've linked to, do your own research, keep digging into this important topic.
Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.